Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
He started off with some beatbox. Hey, what's going on, you guys? Brett here, Trip here. What's happening? How you doing today? Thank you so much for joining the Health or High Water podcast on this beautiful Tuesday, January 30th. We're in Denver, Colorado. It is finally warm out. The sun is shining. I think the frigid winter is hopefully a thing of the past.
Well, I know one thing is we don't need groundhogs when we have a me. You know it's warm and I'm not wearing a beanie inside.
Trip is our groundhog. I love it. Just a couple quick shout outs. We're going to do our sponsors in a different way. So we want to get right into our topics pretty much. But I wanted to give a shout out to Hyperspeed AI. We have an exciting partnership coming with Hyperspeed AI. So if you're not aware yet, so Ascend Performance Training is part of Health or High Water, it's our physical location where we do injury rehabilitation and programming, and we also there's also a genetic portion with our partner Gene Planet. So you get a full genetic program. We send the genetic test out. You get the genetic test back. There's over 100 different alleles. So that's Ascend Performance Training, and we create these customized programs, which is what we're going to get into today. But Hyperspeed AI is going to be a huge partnership. We'll be making a formal and official announcement with Hyperspeed later this week. So look for it on Ascend PT on Instagram, and we'll do it on Trip's LinkedIn. If you're not connected with Trip yet on LinkedIn, go find him. He is a super connector. So a lot of connections, a lot of partnerships. We're working on a wellness retreat as well. We're putting together and a networking event here in Denver. So if you are local to Denver and you're a business owner or want to, start your own business or you want to just be surrounded by some good people, we're going to do that networking event every week. So we have that as well. Also, one more shout out. We have Catherine Ames, who's created this amazing company called Through the Game, which has a powerful mission that we connected with right away. And it was addressing mental health and in specific towards athletes, high school and college age athletes, and how to, traverse the waters right now of being competitive and competing, yet still keeping your mental health in check. And that's going to be a partnership through a company called Legends Baseball and Softball Academy. And we're going to be doing an event there. So we're going to be, there'll be an announcement coming up this week as well. So as you can tell, there's a lot of fun stuff going on. Just wanted to shout those out, and let's get into it.
So I'm going to bridge the gap real quick. So if you guys haven't listened to Brett and I's first episodes of the podcast, we're going to be doing reintroductions of Brett and I here the next following weeks when we have some time in between our guests. We have changed a lot since our first episodes coming on here. We've grown as a company. We've grown as people. It's time for us to redo that. But I'm going to give a quick little shout out to ourselves, to be honest. I'm not going to lie, we got not trying to toot our own horn or anything like that, but we've grown an immense amount, and our process has just gotten better and better especially with these amazing people that we're surrounding ourselves, like Bethany with Pelvic Harmony. Shout out over there. Taste Life Nutrition with Nikki. I mean, we're just doing some amazing things, and Brett and I have both had people in our lives that have had health issues and whatnot, and we wanted to make a huge difference in the health and wellness industry by standardizing and individualizing wellness. And that's kind of where the intro to our podcast starts right here, is talking about what we're getting longevity's sake out of our genetic programming, blood work, biomechanical assessment, family medical history, because it is great to talk about what we can do right now for our health, but we also want to make sure that we're watching out for certain roadblocks and issues that are down the road. So not only here are we taking care of your health through Ascend Performance Training, but we're taking sure that we're talking about your longevity and things that could possibly happen down the road.
That's good. So you and I met a few years back, and I had never really been a science guy at all. I know that it's important to have data to track, like weight and blood pressure and hormones. I know those things are important to track, and I know some people have a tough time tracking them, especially with women, getting on the scale, right? It can be a very unhealthy relationship. You are such a science-driven person. Where did that come from? What was is that just the way you've always been?
No, not really. Mm-hmm. I used to be the bright-eyed, bushy-tail guy that believed in, hey, that kind of frou-frou stuff. But as I started getting older and I started getting more jaded in the world, I started wanting to have proof. And, going to college was huge for me about, going through psychology courses and these other things that, they have these clinical science and these clinical trials going on that proves their point scientifically. Yeah. And I was like, whether it be religion, health, whatever, like I wanted some proof on something, and that slowly developed into when I had the protein bar, that old company I used to have. I wanted people to send me like third-party studies on supplements. I wanted people to send me all this other data backing up to make sure that I wasn't hurting someone else, right? So it started with me being jaded, but it ended up being, to be honest, like I think a fair trade, because if you don't have the data to help these people out, then you're just shooting in the wind. Mm-hmm. It's the same issue we talked about before about certain personal trainers have certain ideas about how health and wellness goes. It's not, the industry is not standardized. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's also about proof based. Yeah,
it made me early on, because I eventually, as I was personal training, I got away from doing metrics and based it off more the way people felt. But as you and I met, and as you worked for me at the other location, which we don't name, we don't ever name, but Trip and I.
This is the closest you were to slipping up.
It was close. Trip and I met at a different location. I was the general manager. I hired you as a personal trainer. You were the second guy came in. You onboarded an insane amount of clients so quickly and did so well there.
Thank you, man.
I had no idea what genetics were. I had no idea that where they played a role in. And you came in gung ho. You were like, "Hey, this is," and I was hesitant. I saw you do a couple of genetic consultations, very skeptical, not because I didn't trust you. I hadn't seen anything done like that before. So talk us through that process. You did the genetic consultations. These were tests that people had brought in with their DNA, and you were able to take that DNA and make it like usable for them. How did you do that?
Yeah, so a lot of these clients did bring in some older genetic tests, which were if you get anything like 5 years ago for genetic testing, it's going to be near impossible to read because it's all paragraphs. It's not very helpful to a common person to read it. While I was getting certified taking care of Mom, like I started realizing how all these different alleles affected different things. For a great example is we've had a ton of people coming in here at Ascend that are missing a fat burning variant. Right, if you're missing this certain fat burning variant RS12678919, you could do 6 or 7 hours worth of cardio and still not burn the same amount of fat as someone who does have it. So how do we program for someone like that? Someone whose cardio.
So say that again. Yeah. RS67. What was that?
Yeah, RS12678919.
Okay.
You got to double check me on that for sure.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah.
And that's a specific fat burning variant, or.
Yeah, so people that have an unfavorable version of this allele are missing a fat burning variant, which helps them be more successful at burning fat. Right? So when we're programming for these people that do have issues like this, so what do we do for a workout for something like this? Well, we implement a lot of plyometrics, a lot of circuit training.
Yeah. We
up the reps, we shorten the time between the sets, and we get a cardio-like aspect out of resistance training. Mm-hmm. And you saw a few of the clients that were at the other place that we shall not name, about how their programs changed and how happy they were even the first 2 weeks of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So so it's like you realized as it has to be a point when you were personal training where you're like, this isn't working for everybody.
Yes.
One program. Let's say we take everybody through one program. Is that sort of what started you on the genetics, where you're like, I have to figure out a different way to get somebody healthy? Is that the beginning of your journey with genetics?
No, that's 100%, man.
Okay.
100%. I was like 16, 17 years old. I'd already been in the gym for about 4 or 5 years, and I started writing programs for my friends and family members. And I'd write them the same one because I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend my time doing these individual programs.
Sure. Yeah.
And I had completely varying results on everyone. Completely. I was like, there's got to be something here that's different. And it took me quite a while to understand what that was. Right. I started writing more individualized programs based off people's goals in college, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then when my brother started that other company that shall not be named, we started getting into genetics. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, this is it. This is the one thing. I started selling genetics at the protein bar. I didn't do the best job about selling them there, don't get me wrong. But I realized that was the difference, like, because we're all different. I didn't really understand how it all got together till I met you, though. And we started adding, like, hey Trip, like, what about the longevity section? What can we do here for this? What can we do here for this? And you're the longevity specialist, right? Recovery, all these other things. We started adding your biomechanical assessment into it.
Yeah.
We started adding the blood work into it. And then we started seeing, like, a picture of what you and I could actually accomplish with this if we use quantitative results.
Yeah. Yeah, so you and I have talked about this a lot, about this story, and I kind of, with this episode for the listeners, I wanted to just kind of rehash up how this all came about.
Yeah.
And how this is, where it's at now today. So let's get into the specific genetic test. Back then, you were using a different one. Somebody would bring a different genetic. Now, we're using a company called Gene Planet. Now, Gene Planet is from the EU.
Yep.
And they have very great privacy laws, unlike some other companies that are U.S. based that own your DNA. So the Gene Planet is very great on privacy. But what else do they do? Why do you like them?
Well, the biggest thing was the whole genome sequencing, right? So let's say you get a test from somebody else, let's say XYZ genetic testing company. All right, Brett, here's your test, what have you. You get a piece of paper back with the results. Let's say it's like 150 different alleles, which is, pretty good for, smaller companies. The thing is, like, that's where the buck ends, right? So that would be not whole genome sequencing. Whole genome sequencing is where you get an app based from Gene Planet that's going to constantly update you with new alleles. And for the people who don't know what allele is, it's an indicator that makes us who we are. Right, some of us have favorable responses, some of us have unfavorable responses, some are neutral, but that's what makes us us. Right, and I kind of forgot where I was.
Yeah, so with this,
going with that,
with Gene Planet, what are some of the alleles that are, because somebody's getting a genetic test now, so they're getting a test, and it's, which I've done. It was the first thing I did, is get a genetic test, and because I wanted to go through the process.
Yeah,
I was fascinated with all the things that came back. There was 3 different areas. There was the cancer risk, there was nutrition, and then there was like a soft tissue injury risk. But there was over 150, I want to say, different indicators over that. Indicators of things that I was favorable for, unfavorable for. And then that's how you design. Now, take it from there. What do you do with that information?
So as a whole, we're getting a ton of information from your blood work, your biomechanical assessment, your family medical history, but the nucleus of this really is the genetics, right? So breaking down our test, you have a dashboard where you can put your biometrics in, your weight, your height, those kind of things, but it's really big broken down into these 3 sections. It's going to be my lifestyle, my health, and then ancestry, right? So we go into my health, we got 3 separate sections in that section. We got mind and body, which is going to be like skincare health, those kind of things. We have sports and nutrition, or sports and fitness, so that's going to cover things like injury mitigation, risk, those kind of things, right? We can actually figure out injuries before they happen using your biomechanical assessment, as well as us understanding your genetics for injury injury prevention. Then we get into things like diet, nutrition on that aspect. What kind of supplements do I need to take? What kind of food do I need to eat?
Yeah.
And why? Right. Even we talked about yours with your the caffeine intensity for certain things.
Sure.
Right, and that affected the way you talked about caffeine. You started changing the way you started drinking coffee.
Yeah. So I had somebody. Oh, hold on a second. As we were talking, I pulled up my genetic test.
You get a new one?
They've just added a new allele.
Which one?
Umami taste perception.
So that one's really cool. So you have salt, sweet, spicy, those things. That's a whole new favor profile from over in Asia.
Interesting. Wow, and it's got the genome type. That is so interesting. So they're constantly updating your app as they discover new alleles. But going back to what you said, like with the caffeine, somebody first asked me, they're like, okay, you get it. I love it. Everyone I've talked to absolutely is floored with this, right? And I think the biggest question after that is, how do we make this practical, right? Because information, it's like reading a book. It's only as good as like, what do we learn from it and how do we apply it, right? To benefit our lives. So I think that's sort of where I'm thinking. Somebody had asked me, well, now caffeine, did your lifestyle change? And am more conscious of it. I'm just more aware. It's part of my knowledge now base. I feel like this information, a lot of it, I did change things, but even the things I didn't change, I'm totally more, it's just more in my realm of knowledge now. Like, oh, that makes sense. I'm super sensitive to caffeine, and, caffeine late at night, I'm more predisposed to, have insomnia if I have a higher sensitivity late at night. So it's pretty wild information to get this.
And I love you said awareness, right? And I think that's one thing that we aren't. I use this all the time as a analogy or metaphor or what have you. But can you imagine taking and getting rid of every single GPS in everyone's car right now?
Sheesh.
Right, not be understanding where you're going would be a huge problem for people. People avoid traffic nowadays because of it. People try to get to places faster with the right routes, all these kind of things, and that's what we're the opportunity that we're giving our clients.
Yeah.
Right. We're giving them roadmaps to every single different place. What's the right thing you need to eat? What's the right supplement you need to take?
Yeah.
How do you need to work out? What's the best recovery strategies for me? And then diving into longevity. What does my risk for cancer look like? What does my cardiovascular risk to look like?
Yeah.
And then being aware of those things make us, sometimes we do change things, sometimes we don't, but at least we're aware enough that this could be a potential risk down the road.
Yeah. At first I was nervous to get my cancer risk back.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty common from what I've heard,
Yeah.
right? And everything I've read is like, hey, you should be mentally prepared to get your cancer. But from my perspective, once it came back, I had risk factors like, hey, you're higher for this. But I wasn't scared to get it back because I know there are things that we all are at higher risk for, right? Everyone's at higher risk for something. And there are things you're at lower risk for. So like you said, for me, there was nothing scary about getting it. I was kind of like, oh, okay. It makes sense. So what are now that you have these genetic programs and they're coming in and we're doing a lot of them now, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about the next bridge to your gap. You've had this dream and this vision to do this on a large scale. I can see that happening 100%. I just want to kind of like bridge the gap with teams now. What are you running into? You mentioned that this can, now we can do supplementation with this, right? Customization, custom supplementation, custom injury risk. What are the limitations with this genetic test? Where is it at right now? And because it's developing, so it's not perfect, right? Where are the limitations at right now? And then what's the bridge to getting this to these sports teams so that it can make an impact?
So the limitations really kind of start with what the genetic test is, right? When you take a genetic test by itself, there's not much to do with it, right? And that's why I think personally that genetic testing hasn't blown up yet, right? It's because it's only going to show us our predispositions or what's likely to come, right? We're talking about a statistic game at that point. But when you start adding things like biomechanical assessment, blood work, family medical history, we can start seeing those predispositions happen in real time. And that's the limitations with genetics, right? If you're not adding this other quantitative test with it, there's not much you're going to get out of it. It's just likelihoods.
So can I interject there real quick? So for those who don't know what a biomechanical assessment is, this is something that we've been doing for a long time, many, many, many years, but now we just put a name to it. Shout out to Dr. Dorninger, one of the smartest, kindest people I've ever met, came in here. Go back and listen to his episode, you guys. Dr. Dorninger is a naturopath who's doing amazing work following in the footsteps of the Ritchie Shoemaker protocol, which was all about mold and sickness. And he's done fantastic things. But he mentioned the term diagnostician, which I was like, oh, my God, I'm totally going to steal that word. And so we came up with the biomechanical assessment. And so what it is it's a way for me to see how somebody moves. I'm watching how their hips sway when they walk. I'm watching how they run, where they're striking on their feet, how long their femur is, how's their posture, how's their natural breathing, how does their breathing. There's all these different things that make somebody move in a particular way, right? So we're adding that into this genetic test now. So not only do you have these predispositions or propensities, now you have all this other data, including ankle stability and balance and hip mobility and all this other stuff into your genetic. I just wanted to interject that so that our listeners know what a biomechanical assessment is. So when you discuss in reference to the genetic test, now adding this into the genetic test.
No, that was actually a perfect interjection because I was kind of getting to the injury prevention risk, right?
Totally.
Great. So I have all these different alleles or indicators about soft tissue injury risk. Tendinopathy, shoulder separations, Achilles ruptures, ACL ruptures, right? But that's what could happen. We add your portion of the biomechanical assessment into this thing. We start seeing gait functionality, hip movements, hinge swings, and then at that point, we're like, all right, we're going to cross-reference this. I see some issues with, your knee coming down the right way when you're striking on a stroke, right? You're coming in. We cross-reference that with your genetics and be like, listen, your COL 1A5 is unfavorable in all 3 accounts, which they have direct correlations with ACL ruptures, right? The limitation, like we said at the beginning, is the genetics, but we're adding the aspects that make these predispositions live, and we can see injuries before they happen, which gives us the opportunity to prehab injuries or strengthen weak spots, than having to do rehab and having to get someone back from injury.
Yeah, that's a touchy, not touchy. That's not the right word. That's a fascinating thing because for somebody just listening out there. They would go, you can see injuries before they happen. Like there's almost like really, but you can definitely see that in gait pattern. I can definitely predict if somebody's going to get injured. You can see it with bad form in the gym. If somebody's got bad form, you know exactly what's going to happen to them. So what you're saying, just to kind of reframe it, is that you can also see things that may happen based off, or the likelihood that something may happen based off a genetic test. And then address that within programming. Exactly.
And then you start adding environmental factors, like let's say you're a football player, right? You're going to have way more stress on your joints than someone who's playing foosball.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Foosball.
It's foosball, Bobby.
I love it.
But, those kind of things, like you start adding these things, it's like, listen, you're unfavorable for these different alleles that have direct correlations with, let's just say, ACL ruptures. You're playing football. You have this, and you already have bad form, bad functionality, bad movement, bad posture. It doesn't take a scientist to understand that you're probably going to get hurt down the road if you don't make changes, right? And those little genetic factors or alleles or indicators give us an opportunity to see what could possibly happen, your weak points.
Yeah.
Because we all do. Like you're right. You said this before. Is like, when you get genetic tests back, I have a ton of people like, oh, I wish I didn't have that one. I was like, but you look at the ones you do have that are good, and I guarantee you wouldn't want to trade those away for the world.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And there's so many of them too. There's, vitamin B9. There's stress sensitivity, oxidative stress in skin, selenium absorption, vitamin D in skin health. There's bedtime, your sleep, and then so this test is so super comprehensive. It's only the research and studies and of Gene Planet now, which are all PhD geneticists. If you look across the board, they're all very smart people that are putting together this program. They've just been funded, an additional $20 million to expand their services. Yep. So this is a company that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
They're reputable, a very easy to use app. So somebody comes into Ascend here, into what we're doing. They get a genetic test through you. They get a program back from you. Now you're trying to get these. We've done plenty of them now. You're trying to get them into the hands of sports teams and bigger teams, NCAAs. You have meetings. You've had talks and discussions. We have not got there yet. What's the bridge in the gap? What's holding teams back right now? What's the biggest thing?
I think it's understanding to where our capabilities already are. And to comment on what you said too, is like, yes, this is still extremely new science, right? But we've been studying genetics for almost 40 years at a deep level, and we do have a certain understanding of them that is applicable science, right? So let's we've been talking injury mitigation and whatnot. Let's talk about that for these schools and these sports programs. One of the biggest issues in sports is injuries.
Biggest.
Right? 100% is keeping your players on the field healthy, but not just that, optimizing them. So the problem that sports teams are having nowadays is that they are not individualizing their programs per person. Right? Most people are on the exact same lifting schedule, the exact same program, eating the exact same things, sleeping the exact same way. And the truth of the fact is that we're all different.
Yeah.
Our bridge to help sports evolve is understanding each individual's issues and strengths, helping with their issues and optimizing their strengths. Right? So we're giving sports teams opportunities to talk talk and help at an individual level instead of just at the top level, trickle down, right? As well as giving, strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists, PTs, giving them the right information to do their job at a higher level, right? I mean, as a personal trainer, if I could give you exactly what someone needs to work out with as your programming, is going to make it, A, easier for you to write a workout, and B, get better results.
I'm all about better results. We can't argue with that.
And where does effectiveness run into all this, right? Am I wasting my time being 2 hours at the gym? Can I get it done in 45 minutes? Am I eating the exactly wrong thing for my genetics? I mean, we had a client come in last week. I took a client for you, and she just started eating based off her genetics. It's only been like a week and a half. And I was like, so how you feeling after that? She's like, I feel insanely different in a good way.
It's crazy.
Right? So we're trying to give these sports teams opportunities to get at a deeper level and understand their players at a deeper level and keep them on the field for longer and play better.
Yeah. Well,
right?
That's the sentiment I hear you echo all the time is keep your athletes on the field longer and healthier. That's you constantly talking about that.
Yeah, and I think that the only gap that we really need to hurdle over is just hounding the education on this and where it's at. Like, listen, yes, it's a new science, but we know so much with even this 3% of our entire genome that it can make that world of difference on your team.
Yeah, that's the big thing. People say, well, does it make that big a difference in my program? So Billy's going to be doing something different than Kevin workout-wise. They're going to have different programs. And it's like, yeah, people should be training based off their body type. Yeah. You wouldn't. And this goes back to bodybuilding with ectomorph, mesomorph, and you don't train the same. A mesomorph wouldn't train the same as an ectomorph, and vice versa. There are, and that's been old school bodybuilding knowledge. So imagine unlocking all this new and now going, oh, okay. It's been a fascinating process to watch this unfold, to see this develop. We've done this many, many times now with different people and come up what is called now the comprehensive wellness profile, which is this entire program that people get. It's very exciting. It's cool. I wanted to use this episode to kind of dive into it. I know we're kind of nearing the end here.
Yep.
So just again, I want to give a shout out to, if you have any questions more about this, you can email Tripp directly at Tripp, TRIPP, ascendpt@gmail.com. And he can answer any direct genetic questions. If you want to set up a fitness consult with me, more than happy to. We're here in Denver, just north of Aurora. We have our own facility here, and that's where our podcast studio is. And we have a pelvic floor specialist in here as well. And so some big exciting things happening. Also, finally, we have, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, have Hyperspeed AI, which is going to be our qualitative data company coming in here this Friday. We're going to be building out a platform for a very comprehensive consultation because, like you said, everything is basically as good as we can track the data.
Right.
So we're going to have an app, built an AI integration app that's going to track all of our data from performance so that we can quantitate this and go, hey, okay, we've improved injuries by 47%, X amount.
Right, as well as taking the data and being able to use it in a grander scale too, right? I mean, every single one of the alleles and tests that we have through Gene Planet are coming back with, third-party clinical research on humans, right? So we're going to be able to not only use that data there, but also prove it through application how well it's working. Like I said, like an injuries going down by 45%. We're seeing a fat loss here or whatnot. And then being able to use that data and restructure what we're doing in a good way, aggregate this data and whatnot. So we're going to be able to we're not going to just use this data, but we're going to be able to prove a lot of what we're doing at a deeper level.
It's amazing. And I want to add one more thing too. We have another project as well that we've been working on with classes, longevity classes at some of the local assisted living facilities. We're in some very amazing facilities, and we're working with memory care units and just some of the regular residents there. And it's something we're growing. I think you and I have found a pet. We both love it way more than we expected to love it. These people have become, close friends of ours now.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be growing that too. So if you want to hop on board or you want to contact us and become a partner and get involved in helping out, please contact us at ascendperformancetraining.com. Pick up Tripp's book. Tripp has written a great book on this process. It is called Health Profiling. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. And it goes into a lot of depth on the beginning ideas of this. So thanks again for joining us on Health or High Water. We hope you're having a wonderful day, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Peace.